I'd like to say that, okay, as we are from different beliefs, yeah, I'm a Catholic, I'm a practicing Catholic, and I must contradict a little bit Godfrey, who said that religion is a private matter, which is, in my regard, not at all. And you will see, especially now, in the very moment, the European Parliament is discussing something on sexual and reproductive health. I think that goes to the vote on Wednesday or something like this. And especially there, when you look into what they want to bring through Parliament, it goes against the freedom of belief and conscience. So in this very Parliament today and up to next week, they're discussing how to, and they see actually the freedom of belief and conscience as an obstacle to their policy that has to be implemented, in their view, all over Europe. So our religious beliefs touch directly to the highest policies, and that's why it's a public matter. It's not only a private matter. So what is it? It is exactly what we heard. It's a pseudo-secularism that imposes state policy as a doctrine in the name of today's higher law, the so-called human rights, as we heard. Not the real, unchangeable human, fundamental rights of the human person, but rather a subjective, relativistic, and evolving version of it. The new human rights dogma and its byproduct called the fight against discrimination, precious, and I will concentrate on Christian when I acknowledge that there are many other problems with the other beliefs, but I will concentrate on that. Pressures Christians to act in public life against their own convictions, even though all democratic constitutions pay lip service to the right to consensus objection. Thus, Christian hospitals and health personnel have to perform immoral acts, such as sterilization, surgeries, or provide abortifacients. Christian public servants have to bless unnatural unions as marriages. Christian schools have to admit openly homosexual and transsexual teachers. Parents have to allow their children to be brainwashed with immoral sex education programs. And if they decide to educate them at home, the education department will ensure their teaching is not homophobic. In Germany, you go right to jail if you take your children out of school because of your religious concerns, because of what is taught to the children. And there are parents in jail today. In his message to the 2011 World Day of Peace, Pope Benedict XVI denounced this insidious form of religious persecution in a diplomatic way by saying that he hopes that, I quote, in the West and especially in Europe, there will be an end to hostility and prejudice against Christians because they are resolved to orient their lives in a way consistent with the values and principles expressed in the Gospel. The irony of all this is that we are supposed to live in an era of human history considered to be the most tolerant ever. What we have instead is the dictatorship of relativism, many times denounced by the Pope. This dictatorship of relativism is the worst and most insidious form of religious persecution, because it forces us Christians and others as well to cultivate an attitude of openness, a positive interest for alternative lifestyles, to accept someone else's diversity, to enrich our personality with his opposing viewpoint. A Swiss philosopher even said that a truly tolerant person, through imagination, tries to interiorly mimic the way of reasoning with subjective truth and good, and between quotes, and the lifestyle of the other, while admitting to his own shortcomings. Such an internal renunciation of our own conviction is tantamount to apostasy, because faith consists precisely in firmly holding as true, on God's own authority, everything He has revealed to us. This is incompatible with a permanent or even transitory attitude of voluntary doubt. So secularist tolerance thus incites us to abandon our Christian faith in order to be part of the festival of diversities, like they wanted, that our modern democracy pretends to be. So in doing so, the modern secular state unleashes a more insidious persecution, and I would say even more insidious than the persecutions that we see, for example, in the Middle East now against Christians. So this is as a little to the original thing that I wanted to say today, because unfortunately our Maître Ducret, who was supposed to be on the panel, couldn't come. He wanted to talk a little bit more about Miviludes, and he defended us, the Tradition Family Property Organization, in this case. But I will tell you a little bit of what happened in the last month, especially with Georges Fenech, whose name you heard in Eric Roux's exposition. So it's the telltale episode unveils quest of impunity for censors of religious thought. The mission of magistrates usually is to uncover the whole truth about the cases brought before their courts. On June 1st, 2012, the president of the Miviludes, the Interministerial Mission for Monitoring and Combating Cultic Deviances, Georges Fenech, was convicted by the Paris Criminal Court for public defamation. In the wake of an annual report to the Prime Minister intended, and I quote, to determine the status of the cultic landscape every year and to alert both citizens and the government about new risks, end of quote, Mr. Georges Fenech was convicted of publicly defaming the French Society for the Defense of Tradition, Family and Property. This is our organization. The TFP is an association of lay Catholics governed by the law of July 1st of 1901 and established in accordance with the canon law. For many years, the TFP has been the object of unjust accusations while enjoying the support of highly placed ecclesiastical authorities, cardinals and men and women religious, who protested in vain to the French civil authorities against the unfounded attacks and slanders spread about the association. The TFP and its leaders have never been convicted of any wrongdoing, while always carrying out peaceful and legal activities in defense of Christian civilization. The association has been the target of groundless and relentless onslaughts. And it has pursued numerous legal actions to put a stop to rumors and slanders, including the one that resulted in the conviction of Mr. Fenech after his report. The judges noted the lack of rigor in the investigations carried out, and the, I quote, lack of prudence in language as the text is issued by a state body answering to the Prime Minister that should not engage in approximations. End of quote. Georges Fenech, re-elected deputy to the UMP party in 2012, left the Miviludes presidency to Serge Blisco, the former PS, so Socialist Party deputy, for the old 10th district of Paris, who chose not to run in the legislative elections of 2012. At the end of 2012, Deputy Fenech appealed his lower court conviction and was thus supposed to appear once again before the judges in spring 2013. But on December 18th, 2012, a projected bill was presented by Mr. Jacques Mézard, senator of the Cantal region of the European Democratic and Social Rally, RDSE. The bill aimed to provide immunity, now listen, the bill aimed to provide immunity for past, present and future presidents of Miviludes should they have to face up to their responsibilities. I quote the single article. Single article. Members of the Interministerial Mission for Monitoring and Combating Cultic Deviances may not be searched, prosecuted, arrested, detained, or tried for opinions issued in their annual report submitted to the Prime Minister in the exercise of their duties. End of quote. On January 21st, 2013, during committee work, an amendment and a motion were filed in order to preempt the risk of having the article censored by the Constitutional Council. The bill's single article was thus replaced by 3 articles. Article 2 stipulates, I quote, "The President of the Mission prepares an annual activity report which is sent to the Prime Minister and made public. He may not be searched, prosecuted, arrested, detained, or tried for opinions issued in the report on the basis of the defamation clause as defined by Article 29 of the Law of July 29, 1881 on press freedom." End of quote. Gaëtan Gors, Socialist Party, senator from the Nièvre region and author of the amendment, explained his approach. I quote, "The proposed wording reverses the burden of proof. While bad faith is usually presumed in cases of defamation, the proposed wording will oblige the plaintiff to prove it instead. These restrictions in relation to the original bill are made necessary by the very strict jurisprudence of the Constitutional Council in matters of criminal immunity." End of quote. So if approved in committee, the bill granting impunity to the Miviludes president would have been submitted to a Senate vote on January 30th. So from December 18th, 2012 to January 30th, 2013, with the 15 days pause for Christmas, it would have taken only 28 days to get a parliamentary proposal through. It is surprising to see how quickly a handful of parliamentarians were ready to vote in order to obtain immunity for one of their own, while he appealed his lower court conviction for public defamation. Fortunately, on the eve of the vote in committee, the Tradition Family and Property Association alerted senators and the media with a press release stating that, I quote, "the law is intended for all, rather than made to place anyone above it." The statement further underlined that a text similar to the one proposed had been object of a 2012 proposed amendment, but was rejected by the Constitutional Council with ruling number 2012-649 DC of March 15, 2012. The TFP went on to state that the proposed immunity would prevent it from exercising its legitimate rights of self-defense. Therefore, approving a law in order to defeat a pending procedure would create an exorbitant privilege that violated public and individual freedoms and allowed some people to defame others without any limit, fear, or constraint. As it became impossible to pull the wool over people's eyes, the same night when the press release was issued, the controversial bill was mysteriously removed from the agenda of the Senate. Although the Court of Appeals overthrew the lower court's ruling and cleared Deputy Georges Fenech of defamation against the TFP, the opposite of the aborted bill at the French Senate clearly shows the keen desire of some parliamentarians and staff to grant their regulators and religious correctness a real license to defame. Thank you very much.